We owe it to the states to do the work to understand how these proposals affect them. How hard is that? I did it. How hard is it? I'm telling the president that you have been misinformed. You supporting the Senate mark will hurt people who are eligible and qualified for Medicaid.
Hi again, everyone. I'm Alicia Menendez in for Nicole Wallace, and it is 5 o'clock here in Washington, D.C., where the vote-a-rama taking place in the Senate is still underway on that massive domestic spending bill, a bill that would drastically increase our deficit and drastically cut assistance programs like Medicaid and SNAP. Today, a flurry of amendments, mostly put forward by Democrats, are being voted on. Democrats attempting to stop the passage of the bill, or at least cut back on the most extreme parts of it. But as they are in the minority, there is little they can do to truly stop it. However, Republicans can only afford to lose one more vote, having already lost Senators Rand Paul of Kentucky and Thom Tillis of North Carolina. Tillis, as you just heard, came out strongly against the bill in a fiery speech on the Senate floor. And when Donald Trump announced he would support a primary challenger to the senator, Tillis announced he would not seek re-election next year. Tillis is a no vote on this bill because of what it does to our most vulnerable. It slashes $1 trillion in Medicaid, one of the spending cuts to make up for the bill's tax cuts to the wealthiest. The Congressional Budget Office found 11.8 million people would lose their health insurance in the next 10 years if this bill becomes law. Across the board, this bill, it is very unpopular. Poll after poll shows its unfavorability. Yet Trump keeps pushing for it to be on his desk by his July 4th deadline. Senator Chris Murphy this afternoon calling it the most deeply immoral piece of legislation he has ever voted on.
There are going to be kids who go hungry because of this bill. This is the biggest reduction in, nutrition benefits for kids in the history of the country. I mean, this is the most deeply immoral piece of legislation that I have ever voted on in my entire time in Congress. We're obviously going to continue to offer these amendments to try to make it better. So far, not a single one of our amendments to try to make the bill better has passed. But we'll be here all day, probably all night, giving Republicans the chance over and over and over again to slim down the tax cuts for the corporations, or to make life a little bit less miserable for hungry kids, or maybe don't throw as many people off of health care, maybe don't close so many rural hospitals. It's going to be a long day and a long night.
And that is where we start this hour with Democratic Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey. Senator, do you agree with your colleague that this legislation is, quote, immoral?
Well, I'll go further. I think it's a moral obscenity, and it is violence in the sense of what it will do to many families by denying them health care when they're sick, by denying them food when their children are hungry, denying our seniors critical care in their latter years, denying the disabled the kind of support that they need. This bill is a moral obscenity, and I'm stunned that only a few senators on their side of the aisle have even been willing to speak to the impact it will have on their states, their constituents, their rural hospitals, their families, their children in their state. They're not looking plainly at the reality. And then you add in the one thing to me that just exposes a lot of hypocrisy, is the Senate bill blows our deficit up far more than even the House bill did. The Senate version now has our deficit going up about $4 trillion. So they are gutting and cutting programs for millions and millions of Americans and giving tax breaks to billionaires, all while doing such fiscal damage to the stability and strength of America, and racking up a bill that our children will have to pay for.
Senator, I want you to take a listen to what your colleague, Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri, had to say about this bill.
We can't be cutting health care for working people and for poor people in order to constantly give special tax treatment to corporations and other entities.
Okay, so if I just listen to that sound, Senator, I would assume that Senator Hawley was not going to be voting for this legislation. But at this moment, he is counted in that whip count as a yes. Make it make sense.
I can't. I really can. I've heard everybody from Josh Hawley to Ron Johnson so stridently speak out against parts of this bill, major parts of this bill, but yet they all seem to fall in line when they were doing the motion to proceed. I'm sorry, Josh Hawley needs to understand this is going to take away from working class Americans health care, food aid, and other critical supports. Millions and millions of Americans are going to be paying higher energy costs, are going to see their premiums, annual premiums go up upwards near $1,000. They're going to see more and more people really hurt, while the wealthiest who do not need our support, they do not need our help, the wealthiest will be getting the biggest benefits from this bill, the wealthiest individuals and corporations. That's why I call this bill a moral obscenity. All the basic decency of our country is being offended, undermined, and frankly, just brutalized by this bill.
Senator, you referenced the two Republican senators who have already said they will not be voting for this legislation. Tom Tillis's resignation announcement, did that come as a surprise to you?
It did. I saw his behavior as someone who was preparing to run again. I think that he was right in his statement. This is a sad commentary in our country that a Republican senator who's trying to work across the aisle, trying to find points of compromise, who believed that you could stand your ground and still forge common ground, is going to be put in a situation where he could not win re-election because of the president turning against him and more. So, again, I think it's sad. I've seen a lot of Republican moderates disappear in my short time in the Senate, from people like John Corker or Jeff Flake, who stood up and spoke out against the president. Anybody who doesn't get on board with Donald Trump's way seems to become a casualty in their re-election efforts.
Well, Senator, I think a lot of us watch Senator Tillis on the floor now that he is not running for re-election, now that he is unleashed and speaking truth to power, and wonder if your Republican colleagues who do not have the same luxury are whispering the same to you behind the scenes. Do you get the sense that they know both how damning this is for the American people when it comes to those cuts for Medicaid, those cuts to SNAP, and then politically just how unpopular this bill is?
Well, look, I've had Republican colleagues tell me a lot over the last months of the Trump administration, everything from the unqualified people that Trump has put up for major cabinet positions, all the way to just some foreign policy and national security nightmares like the Secretary of Defense signaling out attack plans. There's a lot of things I know are offending my Republican colleagues, but it doesn't show a profile in courage to whisper those things, to say them privately, but not stand up on the Senate floor like Tom Tillis did yesterday, calling out this bill for what it does to his state and to our nation. We know the truth of this bill. The more people know about the bill, the more people hate the bill, independents, Democrats, and Republicans. They are not telling the truth when they go and defend this bill. The beneficiaries of this bill are going to be the wealthiest in our country. They will see the disproportionate benefits. Average working Americans are going to see higher costs, from their energy costs to their health care costs, and they're going to rack up a deficit that could take generations to pay and will become, just debt service payments are going to become the largest expense in our budget as a country, absent the Social Security benefits we pay out to American seniors.
Senator, I want you to talk me through what we're watching today on the Senate floor, because you have largely Democrats offering amendments that, in the words of your colleague, Senator Murphy, would actually make this legislation better, either, depending on how you look at it, offering Republican senators the opportunity to make this better. If you look at it from a strategic Democratic vantage point, to get them on the record on some really hard issues here. As you know, Leader Thune, he can lose one more vote. That math is very tricky. Explain to me what it is we're watching today unfold on the Senate floor, and whether or not you, in fact, think there is a Republican you can peel away from Thune.
Well, so there'll always be a chance. Remember, we need two, actually. One would be a tied Senate, and the vice president would have to come in. But two, giving us a 4 total, would be able to do it. And I don't know who those two could be. It could be Murkowski. It could be Collins. There's a number of others that are sort of in the mix. It's more likely we lose tonight than win. But we are going to spend as much time as we can shining a spotlight on either their hypocrisy or their cruelty in this bill, saying simple things like, hey, let's not give billionaires tax hit. If you're making over $100 million in America, how about we say that you get no benefit in tax breaks for this bill? Or maybe we'll give amendments about saving rural hospitals or saving Medicaid or saving food stamps. We're going to do everything we can on aspects of this bill that are horrible to shine a spotlight through our amendments and force them to vote again to try to defeat things that would help constituents in their own state. Now, whether that creates the kind of moral pressure and urgency to get them to change their vote, we don't know. But we will all not forget what happened in 2017. The more we strung out that fight, the more pressure was on senators. And ultimately, Murkowski, Collins, and the late, great John McCain saved the Affordable Care Act. So we're hoping in the night tonight we may see another miracle like that kills this bill in the Senate and sends a clear message to Donald Trump that we're not going to let him in the Senate hurt millions and millions of Americans, take away their health care, take away their food supports, raise, unfortunately, their cost of living at a time when many Americans are just struggling day to day to get by.